I want to answer a few questions about this function x squared plus 10x plus 24. So the first question we have is, what is the vertex? And the formula that I use for vertex is opposite b over 2a for the x value of my vertex. And then whenever I figure out that x value, I plug whatever that is. So I'll just put f of b, opposite b over 2a. Whatever number that I get right here, I plug that into the original function, and that's going to be my y value. Now, it may help if I tell you this quadratic is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And so I know that my b term is 10 and my a term is 1. So let's go ahead and figure out what the x is. It's going to be opposite b over 2 times a. So if b is 10, we'll say negative 10 over 2 times a, which is 1. So that's going to give us negative 5. Now that I know that x is negative 5, I can plug the f of opposite b over 2a into the original function. F of opposite b over 2a is the same thing as f of negative 5, because negative 5 is equal to opposite b over 2a. And so that means I'm going to plug negative 5 into the original function. So negative 5 squared plus 10 times negative 5 plus 24. And let's see, that's going to give us a negative 1. So let me go ahead and just draw a quick little graph. Negative 5, negative 1. Okay, so next question asks, does this graph open upward or downward? And to determine that, I'm going to look at the a term of the graph, which is this right here. If it's positive, we open upward. If it's negative, we open downward. Well, because a was positive 1, we are going to open upward. So our graph is going to look like this. Since we opened upward, that means that this right here is a minimum. We have a minimum at whatever that y value was. And the y value was negative 1. So we open upward and have a minimum at that y value from the vertex of negative 1. Now the next thing that it asks about is range. And range is your y values. We always read a graph, whether it's the y values or the x values, from negative to positive. So if I'm reading this y-axis, and where do I have y values at? I'm going to read it from bottom to top, because I read from negative to positive. And, well, if you start off at the bottom, reading it from bottom to top, you don't have any graph here. No graph, no graph. And then as I get higher, I start having graph. And so where is that at? I start having graph at negative 1, at the y value of negative 1, and then it goes on forever, because this graph, I didn't put any arrows, but it really kind of looks like this. So from negative 1 to infinity is the range. And then the final question here is, where are we increasing and where are we decreasing? So we're going to read this increase and decrease using our x-axis, but let's determine where it's at. Okay, so we're going to read that x-axis from left to right. And from left to right, if your graph gets higher, it is increasing. And then from left to right, if the graph falls, it is decreasing. So we are increasing right here. How do I say that, though? So we're going to use our x values to say that. Okay, what's this x value? It's -5, and we don't really have an x value here because it never ends, so that's going to be infinity. We increase from -5 to infinity, and then we decrease from -infinity to -5. And we do use parentheses with those intervals of increasing, decreasing. We did use a bracket for the range, and that's because the graph actually went through that y value of -5, and so if it goes through that value, you do have to include a bracket